sometimes under difficult circumstances. And that needs to be recognized, and so too does the fact that there are many communities in our country whose rights over the history of our country have not always been respected, and we need to make sure those rights are respected. So we have a lot to do as a country, but it starts with making sure that we can get to a place where we can actually have the conversation. And it's not an either-or proposition.
Sir, last question. Regarding national security, particularly when it comes to countries that have demonstrated aggressive tendencies like North Korea, what do you feel is the best approach to dealing with these nations?
I think the best approach is always diplomacy and multilateral diplomacy. I think it's important that if, for example, sanctions can often be a very useful tool in helping to get rogue actors like the North Koreans to comply with international law or international norms. But those sanctions are only effective when they are observed multilaterally by the international community as a whole, not by just one or two countries. Because if you don't do it that way, then you're basically subverting the whole idea of the sanctions, because cash and goods can still get through, and that undermines what you're trying to do. So I think it's important that we focus on that kind of approach with our allies, and sometimes with countries that are not necessarily our allies, but who have common interests to ours, to make sure that we're putting maximum pressure on regimes like that to do the right thing, not to threaten other countries, not to spread nuclear weapons and nuclear weapons technology, and not to export terrorism or turmoil in other countries. So I think those are things that the President has tried to do. I think Secretary Clinton has talked about that and will further that goal. And I think that's absolutely critical that we do as a country, and we make sure that we continue in that vein. I think it can be effective, and I think the experience bears it out.
Well, thank you. Please.
It doesn't have to be written down. If there are any other questions, I'm happy to answer them off the cuff. That's fine too.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Near Verona.
Yes.
And founded president of a congregation, so I do feel for you.
Okay.
So here's my question. I'm all for open space also and conservation.
Right.
Coming from New Jersey and a policy background, they have the Mount Laurel decision, which says that every community must have some moderate and low-income housing. How do you balance open space and housing? Because all our small businesses need employees who can afford to live here.
Yeah. So one of the things we did in Lower Makefield, we passed something called the Low Impact Development Ordinance, which actually we got an award from the EPA when we did this. It's a unique approach. What it does is it requires that when you do a development, you do a housing development, you try to do it in a way that, first of all, minimizes the amount of impervious surface, so you have a more clustered development. It promotes more green space among developments and more open space among those developments, and ultimately has a real beneficial impact on stormwater management, which for all of our communities along the river, we know all too well how important that is, so that we don't have more runoff that's going downstream, and when we have bad rain events becomes more of a flooding problem. So I think that's a great way of starting to do that. It's good for the environment, it's good for preservation and conservation, and it still allows you to be able to create the housing stock that you need. Yes?
How about abortion funding?
Yes, so I am 100% pro-choice. I've been endorsed by both Planned Parenthood and NARAL in this race. I am I strongly believe in the need to maintain women's access to women's health, including abortion services. One of the fights we've had in Pennsylvania, and I've introduced a bill to try to overturn this a few years ago when the ACA came into effect, and the exchanges were starting up and offering insurance coverage, the Pennsylvania legislature decided that it was going to pass a law forbidding the insurance carriers and the exchanges from offering coverage for abortion services. Now, there is, unfortunately, in the Pennsylvania House at least, only about, I'd say 45 to 50 of us who regularly cast a pro-choice vote. And that's a challenge we have in our own Democratic caucus, because we have a lot of Democrats in the western part of the state who are much more conservative. But we need to turn that around. We need to make sure that especially women of more limited means are not being penalized. And I think that's very important. And we certainly need to make sure that Planned Parenthood continues to be able to operate, not just for abortion services, but all the other services they offer, like cancer screenings and all the things that, you know, if you've been to a clinic, you know what they do on a day-in, day-out basis. Yes?
I have a question. I own a small business, a small manufacturing business in New Jersey.
Yep.
We employ about 20 people. And every year it's an issue with healthcare. Every year.
Yep.
And it skyrockets, and we've made multiple changes. And I've been able to keep the cost down for the employee probably for the last 6 to 7 years, where they pay the same amount. And we've switched, and we're very innovative in what we do to try to do that. With Obamacare, things to me, as far as owning a small business, has progressively got worse when it comes to health care. With the new year coming up, people are talking strategists, and even my broker and stuff like that, brace yourself. Obamacare can go up to 60% for the people participating for their cost. As a small business, sometimes it would be easier for me to say, I'm not offering health care anymore. Go get Obamacare. It's easy for them to do that. Where do you stand on that, and where do you think it leaves the people out there? And where do you think that's going? Because a lot of insurance carriers, and everybody knows it, a lot of insurance carriers are pulling out now. So some areas you only have one insurance carrier, which is monopolizing those areas. Listen, I'm an independent. I can go either way. So I came here tonight to listen to you, to listen to the other candidate, and hear everything that everybody has to say.
Tell them we live here. Tell them we live here.
Yeah, we live here.
We
We just
live
moved
here.
here, we're new.
We live here. We moved into the area a couple of years ago.
I don't know
You know,
you, I don't know the other person.
we don't know anybody. We're very open, and we want to hear what people have to
Other
say.
people right now.
So,
Undecided.
you know, I want to hear what you have to say about that, and what your stance is on that. And it is a huge issue that's affecting small business, big time.
Yeah, and I've heard that from, you know, frankly, other small business owners as well as other employers and frankly, you know, employees. You know,